It's insane how many companies are out there that quote do digital marketing. The vast majority of them are horrible at what they do.
Erik Huberman, founder and CEO of Hawke Media, one of the fastest growing marketing agencies in the US.
I started in real estate a week before the whole banking industry collapsed. One piece of advice I got early into investing that is the best advice I got and the most simple advice is hard work is compounding. And I think that's what people miss. By year 2, you're 32% ahead of people.
Yeah.
By year 3, you're 48% ahead of. Businesses fail for two reasons. You get underwater financially, or you. One of my biggest mantras is work like most won't so you can live like most can't.
Ladies and gentlemen, by way of introduction.
So, Erik, when I read through all your different entrepreneurial ventures, I thought, this guy must be breathing entrepreneurship. So, and this made me wonder then, what were the earliest experiences and factors that set you up for such a life?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up, my grandfather was an entrepreneur on my dad's side, actually both sides. I didn't know my mom's dad. He passed away when I was an infant, but heard the stories. And then my dad was an entrepreneur. So I think part of it was just taking it for granted. Like when all the male figures as a young boy in your life and most of my dad's friends all were entrepreneurs that you're just like, I guess this is what you do. And then, my dad definitely, I think partially, probably unintentionally, because I don't think he ever really cared whether I built a business or went and worked for someone. But the way he treated me really kind of pushed entrepreneurship. He got me really into the idea of making money early. He was very much about independence. When I'd ask him for things as a kid, like I want this, I asked when I was 8 years old, I told him I wanted an electric guitar, and he said, "Good, get a fucking job." Like verbatim, so to an 8-year-old, and I was like,
Yeah.
okay, and tried to go figure out how to make money. Like it was just always this push of like, you should go figure it out.
Yeah.
And I think that was sort of the early stages of I just assumed that's what I would do as an adult is run my own business. I didn't think that I would always like my thought was I would get jobs to go learn something so that eventually I could build my own business, whatever that would be.
Did you already reflect back then on it, or because it was just like how you grew up, right? Like your dad said, okay, get it, like make the money, get a job.
Yeah, I mean, well, like so 6 years old, I knew I wanted to make money, so I took a bunch of my parents' stuff from around the house and put it in a trash bag and walked door to door trying to sell my parents' things to their neighbors.
Yeah.
And then 8 years old, when my dad said that to me, I tried, starting a lemonade stand, and then I sold flowers, and I would literally like run into the street in front of cars because I knew they wouldn't run me over or thought they wouldn't run me over, and then would make them buy flowers from me for like 5 cents a piece,
Yeah.
and then I started buying and selling Beanie Babies, the little
Oh,
beanbag animals that went really popular and made thousands of dollars as an 8-year-old doing that. And
wow.
all to buy this guitar that costs 150 bucks. I had the like whole package. And so I
Yeah.
bought it and then I bought a BMX as well. I saved some money for a car, but that really exposed me. But no, I mean, as a kid, like I bought the guitar, I thought I was going to be a rock star and I was really
Yeah.
set on being a musician. And then
Yeah.
about 12, all my friends started playing music and immediately were better than me. And I was
Wow.
like, oh, like I like performing and I like playing, but I don't like practicing. I'm not that passionate about this.
Yeah.
And so I enjoy sort of the output, but not the input. And so I decided I was going to be in the music business. And then around 16, I really realized that the music business was a tough one. And I was like, maybe I just go into business and it's okay to have a hobby that is playing guitar,
Yeah.
which still play today, still enjoy it, but never got that good. I can,
Yeah.
hang out and jam with a bunch of people, which actually
That's
is
cool.
just fine for me.
Yeah. And how was school for you? Because I always think it's interesting, like for like founders, how they kind of relate to the education system.
Yeah. So I was definitely the class clown and the disruptive one. I definitely had too much energy to be sitting there. I also learned really quickly and still do. Like I can pick things up really fast.
Yeah.
And so combination of bored, hyper energetic, and learning quickly, sorry, I didn't handle boredom very well and I learned quickly, so I was always
Yeah.
bored at school.
Yeah.
I was definitely disruptive, but I went to a really alternative school through high school, like first grade through high school, that was founded by an Indian philosopher named Jiddu Krishnamurti. He has a school in the UK, a few schools in India, and a school in the US. And so it was a very spiritual school. literally was doing meditation in first grade, which, to be clear, first grade meditation is the teacher closes their eyes to meditate and the kids run around making faces. But I was exposed to all these kinds of things that
Yeah.
it allowed me to be at a school where I was disruptive. I was definitely the bane of the existence to the teachers that took themselves really seriously, but the ones that more were like Krishnamurti's disciples and people that studied him, they were just like, you're going to be who you are. And like, it was kind of like what you would think like sort of a hippie upbringing would be, where
Yeah.
they're like, be a free spirit. Like like physics was a great example of this. My physics teacher, Larry was, we would have a class. In the first 5 minutes, I'd understand the concept. And then I'd
Mm.
sit there for an hour while he taught everyone else the concept. So after a little while, and he knew me growing up there, he's like, just go out and go for a run or go hang out and, go for a walk, whatever you want to do. Like you just come back and do well on the test. And I don't really care if you sit here and, do this. So he saw like I had that ability to have that like independent, not independent, but unique and
Yeah.
focused type of learning with the better teachers. And then there were other teachers that hated me that, I was in the
Yeah.
principal's office all the time. I had several suspensions, all that kind of stuff. But the right teachers I really resonated with. And again, I graduated with a good GPA. I went to school in Arizona, University of Arizona, really because I wanted the opposite. Like I had a graduating class from high school of 11 kids and like this small hippie town, small school thing.
Yeah.
And then I went to like a huge, massive party school. And frankly, academics were never hard for me. So the
Yeah.
social aspect really wanted to get out of that, which definitely did.
Where did you grow up? Because now you're based in
Yeah.
California, right?
Yeah, I was always in California. I was born in LA, but I moved
Yeah.
up to this place called Ojai when I was 6, and it's near Santa
I see.
Barbara. It's about an hour and a half north of LA and just a little inland from the beach, like 30
Yeah.
minutes. So it's a small little like mountain hippie town.
When you went to university, then how did you manage to like kind of accommodate with this new scale of people and the interaction? Was it easy for you to catch up to that?
I don't know if easy or hard is a word. It took time. I mean, I
Mm.
definitely like I was always an extrovert, but I was an extrovert in a high school of 40 kids,
Yeah.
42. So it's like I look back at some of the stuff I did my freshman year in terms of just trying to meet people and make friends and that kind of stuff. And I was getting my cues from like shit I had seen in movies and like I didn't
Yeah.
know asking a girl out, like I actually thought like asking a girl to dinner was what you did. So I would see if girls wanted to get dinner and they were like, yeah, sure, we can go to the student union and grab some food. Like it was just
Yeah.
like, what are you asking? Like in college, like that's not like it wasn't normal, but I didn't know that because like again, I had 3 girls in my high school graduating class and I knew
Oh,
them
wow.
all for a long time and I did not date any of them. So it was just
Yeah.
like, it was figuring that out, but I'd say it took me probably a good year and then started to get the hang of like, oh, this is how normal social dynamics are. And it wasn't, again, I think I can tell you because I'm still friends with some of those kids from freshman
Cool.
year. They just saw me as like, you're a nerdy kid. Like that's all it came off as. It wasn't like some crazy, dystopia, like who the hell are you? It's just more like, ah, you're kind of a nerd. That's funny. But I was also social and outgoing and, so there was a nice combination there that allowed me to ramp up. But yeah, I look back and still get a little like cringe about like I said that. That girl must have been like, what are you talking about? And again, I'm still friends with some of these guys that laugh about how I was when I first came in and like kind of how I grew up through college, which, there's a lot of debate about the value of college. And for me, that chance to grow up socially was hyper valuable.
Yeah.
Academically, whatever, honestly. And I
Okay.
wish that it was more valuable, but yeah, socially it was hugely valuable.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I hear more and more, right? That people are saying that it helps you basically to grow up and then probably like also to build relationships and connections in general that because
Yep.
you're very close with a bunch of people. I mean,
Yep.
talking from my own experience. And then later on, like you figure it out after uni probably more.
Yep.
Because then what was your kind of your first business venture in the widest sense?
College, I really always wanted to learn professionally too. I was still on this idea of I'm going to go work for other people to learn things so I can build my own business. So freshman year, I worked in a real estate office because I thought that might be what I wanted to get into. My dad was in it. I had
Yeah.
grown up around it. And then I didn't like working there. So then I went and I had heard over and over again that sales was super important. So I got my summer of sophomore year, I started selling kitchen knives door to door at a company called Cutco. And I was like their dream employee because I didn't come in like I need a summer job and they reached out, whatever. I came in like I want to absorb everything and do everything you're telling me to do and follow every playbook so that I can learn how to sell. And
Yeah.
so I just literally like I followed everything they said to the T and grinded. and became I broke every record they had that
Oh
summer
wow.
and was like one of their top sellers of that time. And I then got promoted to open one of their offices. And a month before I opened the office, a friend of mine called me with a business idea. This was now end of my junior year,
Yeah.
and said, "I'm, gonna we need to filter. There's a new law in California to filter storm drains, and I figured out the mechanical process to do so, but I don't understand sales or marketing at all or how to get
Yeah.
customers. I need a partner. Will you come join me?" I went, "Yep." Called my boss. I'll never forget. I took him to breakfast and said, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to bow out. And this is again a month before I'm supposed to open a territory. They've
Yeah.
invested in me. We're ready to go. They're counting on my sales for that summer, and I just go. And I've already figured out. Like I didn't leave them in the lurch. I called the territory above north and south of me and said, "Do you guys want to expand so that
Yeah.
you can both take over what I've done?" And then, yeah, I remember I'll never forget the line, and I'm still friends with him, but he said, "I wish you understood the meaning of commitment." And I was like, that hurts because I know where you're coming from, but I got to
Yeah.
chase what I'm going to learn. I'm going to learn a lot more starting a business than I am opening a sales office. So went and started that business, did it for the summer, started debating. This is a time when it was starting to get really popular to drop out of school to pursue your business.
Yeah.
And this was like, right after Facebook had
Yeah.
gotten big. Yeah, and this was 2000, summer of 2007. And
Oh,
so I looked
okay.
at it, and at the end of the summer, I got our first contract. We had built this thing out. It was starting to make money. And I went, I don't want to, I'm not really passionate about storm drains. My
Yeah.
partner was because he was a surfer and always got rashes and stuff in the ocean here in LA because of the storm runoff. And so he
Okay.
really loved what he was doing, but I didn't. And so I decided to give my equity back to him and just say, it's cool. This has been a fun summer, great learning experience. I'm here if you need help, but it's yours. And I went back to school and left him to it. And he built it to be a multi-million-dollar company. Like it
Oh
really
wow.
took off. And then and that was cool to see. But then I learned a lot, but then I decided to go back into real estate. And graduating from college, I started in real estate a week before the whole banking industry collapsed in the United States and the whole
Oh
Great
shit.
Recession started. And so was a commercial agent, made $350 that year living in LA post college and went into debt and was just like, this isn't going to work. And
Yeah.
that's what threw me into building online. I started building an online music company.
Okay, so quite like a detour in a way that you did. But
Yep.
were you at any time thinking like contemplating kind of like which direction you want to go? Because it seems like you like just immediately jumped at it and just kind of tried and figured it out on the way.
It's more the latter. I think it's more, it's all about trying things along the way and then like, oh, that worked. Like the
Yeah.
hypothesizing of like, oh, I want to get into this or that. Like I made fun of marketing majors in college and thought it was a dumb degree, and now I have a
Yeah.
300-person marketing agency. Like good luck trying to figure out what you're going to end up doing unless you're a
Yeah.
very focused, like you're doing a very defined degree. Like if you're, going into medicine and you
Yeah.
study and you become a plastic surgeon, you're probably going to be a plastic surgeon for a while
Yeah.
like that, you go get your law degree. Actually, I'd say I don't know how many people that get their law degree actually don't go into law, but you go into specific vocations and you study specific things you're going to. But I studied business management, so like
Mm.
it was kind of like who knows what I'm going to get into.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out. And again, went from real estate to music to t-shirts to women's activewear to running a marketing agency and a venture fund. So, and that was all by 26.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's what I was actually wondering. Like, how old were you when you set up the real estate business that then crashed?
21.
Yeah,
That
like
was
where did
21.
you get that? Yeah, where did you get that confidence from?
Oh, I didn't start a business. I just worked. I went to work at an agency as a commercial real estate agent. So
Yeah,
it's just now there was no salary. So it's like you got to go make the money you make, which I always liked. I had a job in high school. I worked at a health food store in my hometown. And after like 8 months, they had told me they'd give me a raise after six. I was making minimum wage. And
yeah,
after eight, they hadn't given me a raise. And so I went to the GM and said, what's going on? And I found out that my manager was taking credit for all my work and claiming that I was doing nothing because he was giving me his work and
yeah,
then telling the boss that he did it and I didn't do anything. And so I just was like, I don't want my future to be decided by
yeah,
politics. And, God forbid I end up working for someone that sucks. I
yeah,
don't like this. So I'm just going to do my own thing. And whether that's build a business or be in sales, the numbers speak for themselves. In sales, like I closed the deal or I didn't. I'm sure there's
yeah,
other things to worry about, but then in entrepreneurship, I don't like yes, your problems are sometimes other people's faults, but you run the business, so figure it the fuck
yeah.
out. And so I liked being, where the buck stopped, so to speak. So that's where that job came from. I was like I got into real estate because I was like if I sell a building, I make money. It's that simple. I don't really
Yeah.
care about anything else. Don't tell me what time I have to be anywhere. And I worked harder than anyone. I remember, and I've quoted this a lot, but a good example of where my dad taught me. I called him super proud like a couple months into the real estate gig because but at the beginning of the Great Recession, it was bad, but you didn't know what that meant. Like especially
Yeah.
me, I'd never worked. God forbid the market's down and
Yeah.
these banks went out of business. Like don't companies go out of business? Whatever. And so I'm still grinding and called my dad and he's like, "How's it going?" I'm like, "It's just getting ramped up, but it's fun. I'm in the office at 6 a.m. every day. I'm the first one in. I leave about 7 p.m. I'm the last one out. Like
Yeah.
I am grinding." And he's like, 6 a.m. I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "What's wrong with 5 a.m.?" God damn it. Like, but
Yeah.
that was the sort of chip on my shoulder that was created by the way my dad raised me that stayed with me. That it's like you can always put more in, you can always work harder. Like, if not, you're being lazy.
When you were like working that hard, was it also kind of to prove something or to like kind of also like
Yeah,
where was this
it was. I
ambition
mean,
coming from, in a way?
it was to prove something. I mean, my dad was a pretty successful guy, so there was part of me that like success wouldn't have been making a decent sound. At that point, though,
Mm.
I take that back. At that point, it was more just I wanted, like, that was my priority. I
Yeah.
wanted to make something of myself. I wanted to grind and work. I had been
Yeah.
thankfully taught that. And this is something I hate to say kids these days, but I hear so much about work-life balance these days in your 20s. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I didn't think about it at all. I had fun,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong. I went out to bars. But like the idea that I was striving for balance versus like I'm here to work first, and then when I have some time, like no, I'm not making real estate calls at, midnight on a Friday night. So I'll go to the bar. It's fine. But
Yeah.
like when it's time to work, it's time to work. And that's what I was taught. That's how I was brought up. And so I don't know, like that. And I went through waves, I will say. Like when I started building my
Yeah.
own companies, I made excuses for myself where like, oh, I can start at 10 a.m. I don't need to start at 9. But then there was a point with different business partners in different times where I realized the more effort I put into this, the more I get out of it. And
Yeah.
so I went from, finding like that balance to like, I'm going to put everything I can into this when I found that something was working, which by the way, I'm talking a lot, but I think that's an important lesson I learned that a lot of people haven't experienced. When you see that your effort creates results and you get that
Yeah.
instant gratification of like, I spent, instead of, starting work at in 9, I started at 7, but then I ended the month and I made a shit ton more money and everything went well.
Yeah.
It's really easy to get up and go at 7 and
That's
work
true.
those extra 2 hours a day. When you have that reward, like, I see guys like Mark Wahlberg talk about his, routine and Rob Dyrdek, who's
Yeah.
awesome. We've done a bunch of work with. Like, they get up at 3 a.m. and they go to the gym and they do this and that. And everyone's like, how the fuck do you have that energy? They must just be unique. I'm like, they're not unique. They've been rewarded, is
Yeah.
my view of it. Because when you see the reward for doing that, you wake up and you're excited because you know that you're about to put in time that's going to be rewarded and it's easy to find the energy.
Yeah, I think the funny thing for me about ambition is also that people from the outside they always think that it is like it's ambition towards something very specific, either like
Yeah.
money or any form of success. But
Yeah.
how's that for you? Because it seems more like an intrinsic state than
Totally intrinsic. It's my wife said it to me a couple years ago that was super true. Like I grew up a competitive video game player and like played video games through college and then was like, I gotta stop this shit.
yeah,
That's like if there's only one thing I get addicted to and it's video games, like never had a problem with substances or anything else. Like, but yeah. But business to me is the same. It's this achievement thing. It's like an
yeah,
I'm addicted to achievement. And it's like I want to hit the next level. I want to, achieve the next thing. And my life in general is kind of that way. Like I'm running the LA Marathon this Sunday. I hate it, but I'm like, but I want to check it off. And
yeah,
honestly, the only reason I hate it is because like I have a young daughter and everything, and I like spending time with her. And the idea of going and running outside for 3 to 4 hours every Sunday to get my long run in has been a pain. But but yeah, I've just found that like the striving for achievement and the progress and then having the achievement and then looking for the next achievement has been a really uh positive way for me to go through life. I've really
yeah.
enjoyed that both personally and professionally.
Yeah, I think this feeling of reward is probably the best fuel that you can
I would
have.
say, but it's not the reward. Like the outcome isn't necessarily it. Like the if like good example. So my wife's very pregnant too, and is like, "Hey, you might not be running this on Sunday if I go into labor." I'm like, "Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine." Like it's actually not like even if I didn't run the marathon on
Mm.
Sunday, I'd have like a little like, "Ah, that's pretty funny. I trained for a marathon and then never
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
ran the marathon." It's way more about the journey for me than
yeah.
actually the actual final destination. the progress I need. Like
That's
if
true.
I'm not progressing, then I'm frustrated. But as long as I
Yeah,
get the progress, the actual result isn't that important to me.
yeah. And then after your first like kind of business ventures, how did your journey lead to founding Hawke Media?
I skipped through because I don't want to take too much time on it, but
Yeah.
built the music company after 2 years, hired a CEO to take over. Then I built a t-shirt subscription company, sold it after a year and a half, joined an incubator called Science that had just launched Dollar Shave Club, helped them with their portfolio companies, then launched a women's activewear brand with them called Ellie. We sold it a year later to Bally Total Fitness. And then I started consulting and advising. And that's when I saw like the marketing ecosystem's really tough because the best agencies that everyone knows will only work with the biggest companies in the world, the
Yeah.
Fortune 2000. Like other than that, they're not interested. They have high minimums, long contracts, which leaves everyone else to work with a giant landscape of bullshit agencies and bullshit marketers that don't actually know what they're doing. And so there it wasn't and still really isn't a company that had a big brand that anytime you're building a business and you need marketing help, there's a go-to company that can jump in and make sure that you're at least doing best practices and things are set
Yeah.
up right and you've got the boxes checked, so to speak. And so that's what I set out to build. And that's what I started building 11 years ago because I was just frustrated that with the companies, like even my friends' companies that I knew about, that none of them could get access to great marketing and do it in a way that's actually easy to work with.
Yeah.
And so I just went, I'm going to build that. And so we built Hawke Media, called ourselves your outsourced CMO and marketing team. And basically we dive into a business, look at what they're missing in their marketing org, and then can spin up whatever they need. And then it's a la carte. We can ebb and flow as the needs change. So it's
Yeah.
really, that was a concept. It's 11 years later, 300 people later, we've worked
Still
with over
working.
5,000 brands. It worked.
Yeah.
In fact,
And
most of the time we get in trouble is when we try to get too creative and not just stick to what worked from the beginning.
wow. And what was it that was that you considered as broken in the marketing landscape back at the time where you were like, okay, there's actually a gap where you
Yeah.
can provide a better service?
Yeah, so the funny thing is like people would ask what was our secret sauce, and it's like being decent at marketing and doing what we say we're going to do. Like right there, you're in the 99%.
Oh
Like
wow.
most market, like the problem is there's no barrier to entry to create an agency. You literally, anyone can start an agency tomorrow, put up a website, say they're an agency, and there's really no validation for that. And it became sexy to do so. So you have this bad cycle of it's easy to start and it's sexy to start. So everyone dove into it. And thankfully, I think the past few years has weeded a lot out because it became a harder industry. But I know, like, if you're a decent salesperson, you can talk a big game, sign clients. You might churn through them in 3 months, but you just turn into this cycle, which this is where people get in trouble when the market gets tougher. But when the market's good, you can probably outpace sales
Yeah.
and you can build a business that makes you enough money to keep it going. Like it's not going to be a big business, but so
Mm.
what ends up happening is even in the past 11 years, you've gone from 24,000 to 90,000 digital marketing agencies in the United States and like 430,000 nation or worldwide. It's insane how many
Yeah.
companies are out there that quote do digital marketing. But again, the vast majority of them are horrible at what they do.
Yeah.
And so the way to compete is be great at what you do, and then frankly, build a brand that you have that reputation too, which we
Yeah.
have pushed and fought for in every way we can for the entirety of Hawke. That's been one of my main focuses is when someone looks at, do I work with Hawke Media or someone
Yeah.
else? It's an absolute no-brainer that they should be picking us.
Yeah. Oh, that's very interesting. And when was the moment where you said like, okay, I might be onto something?
The first moment right away. I was consulting and like again, I sold my last company. I was
Yeah.
just advising and consulting for some brands. I saw that I couldn't find a decent agency to actually execute for them, and so I just hired a small team using my consulting fees to bring in a little team, and then went back to them and said, "Now we can do it." And they said, "Great," hired us, and like my revenue doubled in the first month, and then just ramped from there. So first year we did over 1 million in revenue. Second year, 2.5. Third year, 5. Fourth year, 10. Like just ramped
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
all
It's
no
crazy.
investment, no outside funding. It was all bootstrapped, profitable from the beginning, and just went. And that's been it for 11 years.
What was your secret in a way? Was it you also hired like really great people that then excelled in the positions?
So yeah, there's a few things. One, I quickly brought on the CEO that ran my music company. I convinced him to come over and join me because that music company, what like why I left was I just didn't see that it was going to be a huge business. It was profitable, but never
Yeah.
going to be huge. And I was right. So 3 years later, I called him and was like, "You should come join me with this." And he basically took execution responsibility off my plate so I could focus on growth.
Okay.
And then I heard so now we have a venture fund. We've invested in over 100 companies between ourselves and our fund.
Mm.
And one piece of advice I got early into investing is the best advice I got and the most simple advice is invest in the ambition of the founder. And I was super ambitious. No one invested in us, but
Yeah.
like what that means is like what you're aiming for, you're gonna get into that ballpark. And so I wanted to build a massive company, and so we went for it. Versus a lot of people are super happy making a few hundred grand a year, or
Yeah.
100 grand a year, or even less, and that's where they're gonna cap out at. And we see it with our own team, with our sales team. We've now acquired 22 agencies, I believe we're at,
Wow.
and I watch it with the founders of those agencies. Some want to run through a wall and make as much as they can, and some are like, I could, I'm making 500,000 a year. I could live off that the rest of my life. Again, you mentioned this earlier intuitively, like the number isn't the goal for me. It's more next. And it's not a hoarding thing, it's a scoreboard thing. So I want
Yeah.
to figure out how we do bigger and better things all the time. And so there isn't any point that I'm like, I'm satisfied. And they talk about this a lot. I guess in the US, they say a lot, like in Europe, you work to live, in the US, you live to work.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there's a part of me that, as much as that's not meant to be a compliment, I live to work. The
Yeah.
game of working and building and growing is a really fun passion of mine too.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you have ever been wondering if that's true, this sentence, but like having lived I mean, being from Germany, having lived in like Netherlands, UK now, I
Yeah.
have to admit that it's partly true to a large extent.
Yeah. No, I think it's
Um,
it's definitely a difference in culture. Now, there's
yeah,
exceptions to the rule on both sides. I think I
definitely.
would say the U.S. overall is becoming more like Europe in that sense. And I think there's individual parts of, European culture that are becoming more like the U.S. There's people that are
Yeah,
seeing the venture capital world and going, "Oh, we should, we're behind here and we have an
yeah,
opportunity." Like
yeah.
we do a lot of work all over Europe too, so I'm there a few times a year.
Yeah, and you already mentioned in 2018 you launched Hawke Ventures, right? And
Yeah.
what were the reasons for you to set up this fund?
Yeah, so it started with, I mean, the other part of this story is I paid myself minimum wage until I started working at Science and helped build that activewear brand, Ellie. And then they paid me $100,000 a year for that year I was there. And so to me, that was wealth, not
Yeah,
rich. That was like,
yeah,
I don't know how I'm ever going to spend this. And then the year I started Hawk, I made, the first year of Hawk, we made 400 grand in profit. And I was like, dude, I didn't know how to spend 100.
yeah,
400? Like, what? And so I quickly went to, okay, so we made a ton of money. What do we do with it? Like, I guess I'll
yeah,
probably start buying real estate and like start investing conservatively. And maybe in a decade, if I keep this going, I'll have a big real estate portfolio and some
yeah,
stability and da 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 da. That's how I looked at it. And then a friend called me and said, we're pivoting from media to e-commerce, and you know everything about e-commerce, and we want you to be an investor. I was like, guys, I'm not investing in crazy startups. I spend all my time on that stuff. Like, I need to put my money into safe
yeah,
things. And like, no, 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 we're not asking you. We're telling you it can be a small check, but you got to be in. I was like, all right. I invested, and that company became a multi-billion-dollar company. And I was like, oh, I actually have a lot of friends and connections and
yeah,
interesting access. Maybe I should take this seriously. So we invested in 7 companies in the first 3 years, or I guess the second, third, and fourth year of Hawk. Um, so 15, 16, 17.
yeah,
And it did really well. And so as you said, in 18, we started looking at the idea of like, do we turn this into a fund? And what
yeah,
would that look like? And it's a longer story. Again, we don't have time to get into the details,
yeah,
but basically what it came down to was the checks I had written have done really well. We also were doing a lot of sweat equity, which is like, doing work for equity and doing marketing
okay,
for equity in
yeah,
companies.
yeah,
And those companies
cool.
didn't do that well generally. And what we found
Mm.
was it goes back to that advice I got. If someone was willing to give me a chunk of their company to do their marketing, they didn't value their equity very much because they could have just paid if and now like I give away no equity. Like I have
Yeah,
a business partner and now, 11 years in, we have 3 equity holders and potentially one more. Like that's it. And that's because these people have dedicated their life to building
yeah,
my vision and like that's the right thing to do. And
yeah,
frankly, it helps me have partners that allow me to, have other people that care like I do. So that is the only way of, and it took me years to part with it. But people that are like, I'm starting my company, take 20% to do my Facebook ads, like they're not trying to build something big. They don't have a
yeah.
vision for that. And so we learned that, and that was where it's like, well, we should write more checks. And then it
Mm.
was like, well, I don't have unlimited capital, so
Yeah,
we should raise the money. And that's where it came from.
yeah. And how do you select the companies now that you invest in?
It's all marketing technology and e-commerce technology. So it's all the things that tools that we would use to power what we do for our clients. And
Yeah.
so it's, pretty straightforward. It's like obviously look at a company, look at the founder, make sure we like the founder and think they're someone that can build a company, because that's a huge factor is, you're going to hit hard times and
Yeah.
not just once. Are you going to be able to fight through them, figure it out, and make your company go? Because you're going to deal with like things that are, going to crush your soul to build a business. And if you can't work through it, you're going to be out. And so and that never goes away. So you need to identify if the person has that grit and drive to do that. And then, is it a good idea? Do we like the concept? Do we think that's where the market's going? Like, we'll look at that. And then we'll use the tool that they've built, see if it works for our clients, and
Yeah.
and make sure that it's something that we like as a tool. And then we have to come up with a thesis of, there's a lot, the problem with the sector we invest in is there's a lot of great features that are like, this is a
Okay.
great tool, great concept, people need this. It's not a business, it's a
Yeah.
tool. And so this isn't going to turn into a big company. It's just going to be a nice feature that people will pay for. And listen, it can make, a few $1 million a year, but
Mm.
that's not venture backable. And so
Yeah.
there's that part of it too. And so, we go through, and there's a lot more to our diligence than that, but you're trying to be, brief on it. And
Yeah.
then once we get through all that, then yeah, we'll generally write a check, and then we try to be their, best partner, where we've got 30 to 50 companies a month coming into the Hawke ecosystem. We currently run marketing for about 600.
Oh,
Now we
wow.
have a new tool that should be beneficial to our clients. Let's make sure they
Yeah.
use it.
Probably 20 or more years ago, there were like two main things that VCs could provide, I think, which was like probably knowledge and money. But then
Yeah,
with the democratization of knowledge with the internet and especially now with AI, I
exactly.
think there's only
Yep.
money left, which is also debatable because there's so much competition among VCs. So probably money doesn't make you stand out. So I'm wondering, what is it that
Correct.
sets you and in general like VCs apart these days?
Yeah, I actually totally agree with you. Though I would say the other value that VCs have are connections. If you're a
Yeah.
younger entrepreneur and you don't know the world, like, a company like Andreessen Horowitz can
Yeah.
call anyone they want anytime. And like, if they're going to leverage that for you, there's a lot of connections there,
Yeah.
and strategy's still there. Like, as much as your right information is there, it doesn't mean
Mm.
that you know how to apply that information to your company. So having good guidance, I actually
Yeah.
literally before this, just Barry's Bootcamp, the workout company.
No, no, no.
They're in the UK too, but I just interviewed the CEO on my podcast, and he was talking about how the investor they brought in early when they wanted to expand was the best partnership he could have ever dreamed of, because they knew the playbook to expansion and he
Yeah.
didn't. So
Yeah.
there's still that. So
I see.
don't want to take that away too much,
Yeah.
but there's also a lot of capital with people that don't know all that stuff, and they call it dumb money. For us, I agree. Like, from an investment standpoint, I think the venture asset class is a really tough one, because it's high risk but not necessarily high reward when you actually look at the landscape. Because what happens is these venture companies, they invest in whatever. Let's just say you invest in 20 companies out of a fund,
Yeah.
one or two do great, most of them maybe do okay, a bunch of them fail. For those two to pay for the rest is kind of the model.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a hard model. That's not private equity model. That's not most investment classes model is let's make a bunch of bets and hope they work. Like,
Yeah.
it's a crazy asset class. And when you look at the top decile of performance in venture, it isn't that great. It's okay.
Mm.
And it's about picking the right one and the right fund,
Yeah.
and then you get crazy returns. And so for me, venture as a whole, I'm like, I'm not that interested, but because I'm able to invest in a piece of software that I have more insight into than almost anyone on the planet. Not, there are other people like me, meaning like there's other people that run great marketing agencies that can look at these
Yeah.
tools and decide whether they like them, but there's not that many of us. So our ability as an agency to go look at a tool, go, wait, no, this is actually really powerful. I like what these people are doing. I think we have a bunch of
Yeah.
business we could bring. And then so the diligence part, we have a lot of opportunity in. And then once we invest, hundreds of clients that we can bring to them. So we can take a company doing 20 grand a month in revenue, take them to 1 or 200 grand a month in revenue very quickly. And then, now they've got a real business, they've got a scale. So we're able to mitigate a lot of the risk in venture, which is part of the job, so that then it's just how big is the addressable market, and is this founder
Yeah.
going to take it there? And like, let's get past that first step of like, can we get traction, proof of concept, all that? We can cover that between our diligence and our partnership, and then get them there. And yeah, I got a couple venture. We get quarterly reports from our portfolio companies.
Yeah.
Got one deal we did like a little while ago. I actually shouldn't say it because I don't want to call them out, but their revenues like tripled in a few months, and it's like great, like that's what we're looking for. And so, you get those. And by the way, even with all of that, In our first fund, we did 18 deals. I think, 6 years later, four have failed. Two are doing really well. A couple are doing pretty well, and the rest we'll see. And
Yeah,
that's a few years in. So it's like, even with all that diligence and that partnership, it's still
yeah.
really hard. But
Go
that
ahead.
first fund, one deal is worth more than triple the entire fund. So even though we didn't want to be the model of like one will pay
Yeah.
for everything, that's where we ended up.
Yeah. I mean, it paid off apparently, so that's great.
Oh
And
yeah.
if you think of your successful trajectory with Hawke Media, what would you say is the single most important factor that got you there?
Uh, yeah, drive, wanting
Yeah.
it to be big, wanting it, willing it to be something great, and like just being and I hate the word passion. I think it gets thrown around too much,
Mm.
but like being committed to this is going to be big. It's going to be great. We're going to be the best at what we do. We're going to be easy to work with. I would like to say focus, but we've definitely not been focused at times, and it caused
Yeah.
pain. But we've been able to come back and refocus and get it going, and I think that's a lot of it.
Yeah. And do you think that's something people can learn? You think it's something like can be trained over time?
Well, yes, 100%. The people that say like entrepreneur and the whole entrepreneurs are born thing is an interesting one. I think that's debatable. I think that
Yeah.
there is
Yeah.
truth to that, but I do think it's a bit self-congratulating when entrepreneurs are like, oh, they're
Yeah.
born, not made. But
Yeah.
because you've seen the opposite. You've seen people that work in industry, but the average entrepreneur is, I think, 47 years old. So it's like, that's not actually the case.
Yeah.
Um, but I do think there's a part of you that has to be able to deal with stress at a level most people won't or can't,
Yeah.
that you have to do this. And I think that's the piece that I don't know whether that's nature or nurture. I do think you can get that from nurture and just
Yeah.
learning grit and learning challenges. Like Andrew Huberman talks a lot about this in terms of
Yeah.
training that muscle of doing things you don't want to do that are hard,
Yeah.
like ice, that's why ice plunges are interesting, or even training, or,
Mm.
doing things that are, not fun in the moment, that are hard to do, build so much grit that if you're able to like develop that, then I think entrepreneurship is doable. And
Yeah.
learning the tasks and learning how to manage a company, I've seen a lot of mediocrely smart people run great companies. I
Yeah.
don't think that's like the part that's difficult. I think it's getting over the ability to be a self-starter and run towards challenge, run towards things that are hard.
Mm.
And it's always happening, but like I was talking to my business partner yesterday about like last week, he asked me to handle like four really hard conversations and hard decisions we had to make. And literally by Tuesday night, I was done because I don't avoid it. Like I just
Yeah.
naturally, I'm like, all right, let's go do it. Like this is what has to happen, go.
Yeah.
And I think most people do. And that's where it becomes hard. And I had a couple college students come shadow me for a day a couple months ago and just watch. I think it was a couple months ago. Yeah. And just watch what I did. Like literally it was just a day in the life,
Yeah.
which is there isn't really a typical day for me, but I tried to make it as typical. Like we
Yeah.
scheduled it a few months out, so I tried to make it like an actual, like you might
That's
be
cool.
bored today, but I'm
Mm.
just going to show you what the job is.
Yeah.
And by the end of the day, they both looked at me and said, I never want to run a company. Like it's good to realize that.
Yeah.
Like
Fair enough.
it's good to know,
Yeah.
like, sorry that I couldn't inspire you to be an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, but like, by the way, 99% of people aren't built for
Exactly.
it and don't want to
Yeah.
be. But if you really want to be, then yeah, I think you can come up with that. I don't
Yeah.
think it necessarily is just something you're born with.
Because on a more like macro scale, I think like what's happening is that so many young people feel lost in a way and unsure of like which path to take, and probably trying out to find what they're passionate about. So what would you say to a young person which is in their beginning mid-20s and feels excited about all the changes that are happening in the moment with like tech, media, and
Well,
also entrepreneurship? What would you say to them?
don't overthink and work really hard. I think that is the advice that people are not getting right now. Everybody's seeking this work-life balance. I mentioned it already, and
Yeah.
it's something that I think like listen, the general concept of having work-life balance is a great one. I think that's
Mm.
fantastic. I've lived, right before we started recording, we talked about my snowboard trip that I
Yeah.
do every
Yeah.
year. Like I don't think I have a challenge with the balance thing, but and I talk about it as harmony. Like I try to make things
Yeah.
blend that I get to do fun. Like that snowboard trip was with a bunch of entrepreneurs, and like I get to do things that all kind of blend together and benefit all. But I think that being your North Star in your 20s,
Yeah.
is where you're going to pay for it in your 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
So you can choose to put in the work when you're in your 20s and you have the energy. And I think that's what it's hard to understand what that is. I'm 38 now, and I already see like the decline of energy and ability to,
Wow.
really just work nonstop. You're in your 20s, you have nothing else. You don't have a spouse generally, you don't have
Yeah.
kids, you don't have a mortgage, you don't have anything else other than work and have fun. And it is really easy to strike a balance with those unless you over index in having fun, which I'm watching kids. I mean, I heard a couple former employees talking about like just racking up debt so they can travel the world because fuck it, they'll be broke in their 40s anyways. I'm like, you think that's really clever and funny until you turn 40. And then you go, and that comes quick. I'm
Yeah.
38, but like it feels like I'm very close very quickly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you're like, it's still me. Like that kid that thinks he's punting it to someone else, that's not someone else, that's you in
Oh,
20
that's
years, and
crazy.
it's going to suck because
Yeah.
now you have less energy. You haven't built a career where you can have like be more strategic and do things that are a little more, fun for that age demographic. And you're just going to have to be grinding and you're never going to get out of that. And so, hard work is compounding. And I think
Yeah.
that's what people miss. Is like if you work an extra hour a day, let's say normal person works 8 hours a day, you work nine.
Yeah.
Over time, it's not that you just like what percentage is that? That would be, I don't know, what's 1/8, 15%? Anyways, let's just
Yeah.
rough math 16%. So you're working 16% more than everyone else. It's not like a year later you're 16% ahead and then 2 years later you're still 16% ahead. All that work, it compounds on itself. And I don't mean this linearly. This is not like you just sit at your desk and now you're making
Yeah.
more
Of
money.
course.
But like if you're actually doing productive work and building something or growing,
Yeah.
what happens is that extra 16% produces 16% more output, which means then you can take a step above that and it starts to
Mm.
compound on itself that by year two, you're 32% ahead of people.
Yeah.
By year three, you're 48% ahead of, and it's this compounding thing that all of a sudden you realize if you work really hard for 5 to 10 years, you're literally making twice as much money as everyone else, working the
Yeah.
same amount, and you're just way ahead. And I've watched this not every time, but almost every time. I watch the people that are successful are the ones that really put in the work early and just
Yeah.
stayed focused. And listen, you're probably going to take jobs that don't work out. You're probably going to get into industries that don't work out. I'm on my fifth company. Like it's not necessarily like you're going to
Yeah.
be out the gate. It's going to be linear and you're just stacking every year. But
Yeah.
what I will say is you're going to look back if you do that 10, 15 years later and realize how far ahead of your peers you are. And again, I try to preach this a lot now because the amount of inundation on social media about like going on a vacation for
Mm.
Americans. I never thought about taking a vacation to Europe at 22 years old. Like that
Yeah.
was a ridiculous thing to think about. Now it's like everyone tries to go to fucking Positano right as they graduate college. Like they don't even have the
Yeah.
money to do it, but they go into debt to do it. It's just like these things that you're like, delayed gratification is okay. And if you
Yeah.
put in that work, then you can live the life everyone wants to live. Like one of my biggest mantras is work like most won't, so you can live like most can't.
Yeah.
And that I think a
That's a good
lot of
one.
people have gotten to the point where they want they have the entitlement of I want all the things all my friends have, but they don't want to put in the work. And there's
Yeah.
a lot of reward in that work if you can muster it up.
I always like to think of life in different phases, and you have sold two e-commerce businesses, built a company now valued, I think, over 150 million. Team of, you mentioned 300
Who
employees.
knows when ever.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and launched a 25 million fund. So, what would you say? What phase are you in right now, and what's next for you?
Yeah, I'm trying. So it's funny. That valuation came from a deal in 2021 that we turned down. But that's why I was who knows what we're worth now.
Yeah, yeah,
When we're not. I've kind of taken the idea. Like we looked at raising money and actually getting the valuation of the company and
yeah,
doing all that. And you're kind of a victim to the market in that sense, where it's like if people are really excited about where the market is and everything in the future and not scared, then yeah, raising money and selling a company and doing all those things is really interesting. We haven't been there in 3 years, at least in the US. Like it's been kind
yeah.
of a bad time unless you're the best asset out there.
Mm,
And so I realized like I don't want to be a victim to the market and trying to get out of this. So instead, we've been really focused on how do we build something sustainable, not just from like a financial standpoint where like
yeah,
it's making money and it sustains and it's fine, but also personally where it's like I do the things that I could do the rest of my life. That I'm having fun with this. It's doing the things I want to do. I'm enjoying the ride. I've got a good team around me. That it's never going to be perfect, but
yeah,
it's damn close that I'm like I'm enjoying it and I could do this for a very long time. And that's what I've been focused on is how do I retain myself and make this something
Yeah.
I love doing, that I stay engaged and I want to keep doing it.
That's really cool. So like for the next phase, basically, it's kind of like getting closer to this state of yeah, perfection or harmony, basically, that you mentioned earlier.
Yep.
Cool. And
And again, I don't think I'm far off. It's more just I still get we don't like we're hiring a bunch of senior executives right now. So like
yeah,
by nature, we don't have the perfect people in the perfect
yeah,
places yet.
yeah,
We're really close. We have a couple more hires that we're like very close to making, and
yeah,
then we've got to ramp them up. We've got to make sure they're the right people. We've got to
yeah,
get to a point where they're working great. And once that's there, there's always going to be changes. Someone on the executive team is going to decide they want to move on or whatever. Like
yeah,
there's always going to be a little bit of adjusting,
sure.
but we are we're getting closer and closer to a place where I can rely on the team to do the things they need to do so I can focus on the thing my best use, which
Yeah.
back to that energy thing. When you're doing things that are fun and great and you know you've got good backup, it's really a fun thing to do. It's fun to run a company like that.
Erik, we have a tradition, a closing tradition on this podcast. It's called the open letter. So you can address like a one sentence letter to a specific person or group. So, for instance, to your younger self, to future entrepreneurs. Who
Yeah.
would that be, and what would you say?
Me or any entrepreneur, keep going. I don't need more than 2 words. Like
Yeah,
you learn that like their businesses fail for 2 reasons. You get underwater financially or you give up.
yeah.
So if you take giving up off the table and then you are careful with your finances, it's not going anywhere.
I like the
So
simplicity
just
of
keep
it.
going. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. So thank you so much, Erik. I really appreciated your openness and for this incredible conversation, and especially also for expanding my imagination of like what you can achieve when you really work relentlessly towards something. So it has been a great inspiration for me to hear your story. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.